Hey, what's up, you guys? WWE fan 0599 here again. And today we're going to review Cell. So, Cell stars John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. And what this film is about when this, I guess you could say, radio satellite from, phones and stuff creates this zombie apocalypse in many ways, and now John Cusack, along with Samuel L. Jackson, basically have to survive this zombie apocalypse. So what did I think of Cell? This has got to be one of the worst zombie movies I think I've ever seen, to be honest. Probably the most boring zombie film probably I've ever seen, to be honest, because this movie was bad. It is such a bad movie. Now, I will admit, it's not one of the worst things I've ever seen, like some people have made it out to be, but it's still not a good movie. It's still a pretty bad film. So let's get into my positives, because I actually do have some positives with Cell, and my positives are, first being, I did enjoy Samuel L. Jackson for the most part. He was very enjoyable for the most part in the film. He really was the only interesting character in the movie. So yeah, I did enjoy, for the most part, Samuel L. Jackson in the movie. And the opening scene to this movie is so unintentionally hilarious that I was just dying of laughter because just of how unintentionally hilarious that opening scene was. So yeah, that's really the only positives I can give this movie. Besides that, there's a lot of things wrong with this movie. First being the characters / the acting. Everyone seems like they're bored out of their minds in this movie. Not necessarily the acting is bad per se, except for, more or less just one person's really terrible. It just seems like everyone just doesn't want to be there. John Cusack, who I'm not really the hugest fan of, once again just seems like he's bored and just doesn't want to be there. Literally, this is him throughout the entire movie. I'm trying to look for my son. Can you see? This is literally, that's what he's like throughout the entirety of the movie. Even like I said, Samuel L. Jackson, his character even gets boring at some points. Like I said, he's enjoyable for the most part, but there were some times where I did feel like his character was very bland and boring. There's this woman that they have to bring along. She's not that very good either. And then there's this dude. Oh, man. There's this boy they have to bring along with them. And his acting was atrocious. He was by far the worst one in the movie. So, yeah. Just mostly everyone in this movie seemed like they were just bored and didn't want to be there. The action is terrible. The action is very poorly filmed, in my opinion. Some quick cut, shaky cam nonsense, really. Just, the action is terrible in this movie. I hated the action in this movie. The movie is so inconsistent and so confusing. It literally makes no sense. I was seriously questioning what was going on in the movie at some points because it was inconsistent and it made no sense. I was just left there by the end of it, I was just like, what? I was just left so confused and left with so many questions. I was just like, where did this go? To be honest, you know what I mean? So yeah, the zombies themselves, actually, this might be the worst depiction I've ever seen of zombies in a movie because they just act, they kind of do act like zombies, but it's more or less like zombies you would see in 28 Days Later or World War Z, not like something you would see in The Walking Dead, for example. They were just so poorly executed and so poorly represented. I was just like, what? They were terrible. I honestly, like I said, this is probably the worst depiction I've ever seen of zombies in a film. The writing's atrocious. The writing is just awful with this movie. I hated the writing. The directing is just as terrible. Really, the directing is absolutely awful with this movie. And the biggest problem with this movie is that it is so boring. Holy moly, this movie is boring. Goodness gracious. At the beginning of the movie, I thought we were about to get a movie that was just so hilariously awful. Because like I said, that opening scene was so unintentionally hilarious. I was like, okay, we're in something just so bad, it's going to be hilariously awful. Then after that, it just becomes really boring and dull. Like, seriously. I think I even fell asleep at one point during this movie. Because that's how boring it is. Like, it's so boring and dull and lifeless. Like, seriously, it's very lifeless, this movie. So, yeah. Guys, Cell is a really terrible movie. It really is a bad film. I did not enjoy Cell. Cell is pretty terrible. So it's time for my official grade on Cell, and my official grade on Cell is a D. It's an awful movie. It's honestly a terrible zombie film. Like I said, probably the most boring zombie film I have ever seen. Like I said, the characters are boring, the action's filmed terribly, and the movie is so inconsistent and so confused. It is an awful movie. I hated Cell. Just terrible. Just avoid it. So yeah. So what did you guys think of Cell? Leave it in the comment section below. I'm WWE Fan 599, and we'll see you about later. Peace.